Greetings, everyone. I hope this week finds you doing well. I'm going to be posting, excuse me, I'm going to be posting 3 videos this weekend all about different sections of an essay and the formats of those sections that I need you to try and show me that you can master. Okay. I've been looking at your submissions this week of your paragraphs and your reflections. So I have a better example of your writing, and I can sort of gear what we're going to be focusing on as we go on the needs that I see I need to address in your writing. And overall, they were all pretty good. Just some grammar mistakes, but this is not a grammar class, so you're not going to fail the class if you start off with bad grammar. Let's just hope by the end of the semester you've improved, and that's all I need to see is that you address the mistakes that I point out. Okay, well, enough of that. We're going to be talking first about introductory paragraphs, okay? It is, for me, in my experience, one of the least loved paragraphs of a student essay, and probably the most important. A lot of people confuse what the function of an essay, of an introduction is. They think it's to introduce their text or something, but the introduction of an essay for our purposes, now this is, we're talking about an English 1101 class, is to introduce your subject, okay? The subject, not the text, but the subject, all right? And that gets confusing when you use a text to have something to say about that subject, because the temptation is to want to introduce, say you're talking about female role models in film, right? That's an important subject on itself. And then you use, say, for example, The Wizard of Oz, right? Where Dorothy's got the Wicked Witch, she's got Annie M, she's got the Good Witch, whatever. And she's in the middle trying to figure out which one of these female role models she needs to be. Well, the temptation then is to introduce in your introduction the movie The Wizard of Oz. And that misleads the reader and it confuses them. So you need to make sure you're introducing your subject, all right? You also want to make sure you have a nice hook, because it's important. You want your reader to be interested and invested in continuing to read your essay. So you probably want to take some notes. I'm going to talk about 7 different ways you can hook a reader in your introduction, okay? Okay, the first, excuse me, the first interesting way to start an introductory paragraph to catch a reader's attention would be to perhaps ask a question. A lot of these I'm sure you've gone through in high school. I just want to review to make sure my students all have the same information. So ask a question, because immediately when you ask a question, you engage the reader and involve them, because they're going to be thinking of their answer to that question. The second example of a good way to hook a reader is to make a strong statement, to declare something, and then you explain it. So, for example, dogs are terrible pets. Okay, wow, that's a strong statement. Then you go through and be like, dogs are terrible pets. Some people think, but most people think, so then you kind of get the reader going, oh, okay, I got to pay attention. This is going to be an interesting ride here. The third way to hook a reader right away is to have a statement of fact or use a statistic. When you say something like, for example, 20% of people who are in drunk driving accidents go to jail, or something like that. Using a fact or statistic, people would be like, oh, okay. You need to probably cite a credible source when you do that. rather than just an opinion, because opinion isn't fact, feelings aren't facts. So you got to cite a source for when you do that, that which gives it more integrity. All right. Next is to start off with a metaphor or simile as a hook. Saying something like being in a drunk driving accident is like being out in the ocean in a lifeboat. It's just very concerning. Blah blah blah. Use a simile or a metaphor. Um, that's not really the strongest way, but if you're creative and can come up with an interesting metaphor, it definitely engages the reader. Next is maybe to use what's called an anecdote, which is a brief, quick story from your own personal experience. Those are very engaging. So try one of those. After that is a description. If you're good with words and you can paint a picture of what you're describing without naming it and then eventually get to it, that's a very powerful thing. Just using words, a series of words, of adjectives to describe something, then that's a good use of descriptive language. And last, and probably for me, the weakest, is to use a quote. Because, anybody can go to quotes.com or Google Quotes or whatever, source you get this. And unless it's, we all know the cliches. We all know the Ben Franklin quotes, the Mark Twain quotes, unless you're quoting something that's really, really a good way to raise your subject, then I'd stay away from quotes. Like, for example, if you're writing about fear and you use the, Roosevelt, all we have to fear is fear itself, or is that Kennedy? I can't remember. It's kind of cliche. Stay away from those. But if you've got something interesting that somebody said other than them, but here's the thing. If you use a quote, you got to cite your source. And Google Quotes or Quotable Quotes, whatever.com, that's not your source. You got to go back to the source of the person that was published saying it, okay? And that's a lot of work. So those are 7 ways to look at introducing your introductions. Now, as I said, this is going to be a little longer video, but now we need to talk about what comes after your first sentence, all right? I'm sorry, I've got a tickle in my throat here. It won't go away. But what you're building towards in your introductory paragraphs, you're introducing your subject, and you're going to give general information about it, and you're going to narrow it down until you get to your thesis statement. Now, there's no rule that says your thesis statement has to be the last sentence of your introduction, but here's my argument for why, for our purposes, it should be. Okay, you're not going to fail your essay if you start with your thesis topic. But again, that's showing me you're not willing to even try this way I'm describing here in just a few minutes. And that's, again, you're not going to fail because of it, but it makes logical sense to me when you start about your subject and then you work your way down to your thesis statement about that subject. Okay, because then that serves as a transition sentence into your first paragraph, where you start taking parts of your thesis statement and using that in your analysis. Okay, so you start off broad. Imagine your introduction looks like an upside down triangle. Okay, where you start off broad, introducing your subject. And like we'll go back to the Dorothy and the role models. Okay, you start off broad talking about female role models. That's what you're introducing. Then you narrow it down to a lot of times we learn our role modeling from people in film and TV, right? Narrow it down. Then you narrow it down even more. In The Wizard of Oz, now you've got something specific about a text you're going to use to talk about those female role models. And then you give me your thesis claim about, how the director of Wizard of Oz, or if you're talking about the book, Frank, what's his name? L. Frank Baum, how he created something about female role models that you're going to discuss, okay? Or that you've observed and you're going to analyze for. All right, so that's my main concern, what I'm looking for as far as form of your introductory paragraphs. If you have any questions, then you can email me. We can set up a Google Meet. And the next assignment that you're going to do is you're going to take your introductory paragraph of the assignment you just turned in, the reflection, or the if you're in 1102, then the intro to your God, I can't remember what you did. Oh, to the Born of Man and Woman essay. So, and I want you to put it in this form. I want you to identify your subject, give some context, narrow it down to, and in this short story, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And I'll look forward to seeing those very soon. Please, I will put up a prompt in the content for this introduction exercise. Okay? Thank you for listening. Be safe, be well. Bye-bye.